dangerous people are coming here, and the good people are dying.
I strive to be a returning citizen. To so many people, I'm still an enemy.
I like to blindfold you.
So that no one can hold me hostage and make me tell them.
Exactly.
Okay, let's do it.
We are ultimately here because 50 people died and they do not have a voice. We in this House are their voice. And today, Mr. Speaker, we have used that voice wisely.
New Zealand's parliament passed a law banning most semi-automatic weapons less than a month after the Christchurch attack. A buyback scheme will run until the end of September to compensate gun owners whose firearms are now illegal. After a 4-day period in which 3 people were seemingly pushed out of the Department of Homeland Security, President Trump was asked whether his senior aide Stephen Miller, who many believe was behind the departures, could lead the agency.
He's a brilliant man, and frankly, there's only one person that's running it. You know who that is? It's me.
A day before Indians vote for their next prime minister, the Election Commission blocked the release of a biopic about the current prime minister, Narendra Modi, depicting his hard-knock childhood, his militant training, and his skills on a motorbike, saying the film might be enough to give him an unfair advantage at the polls.
हिंदुस्तान आतंक से नहीं, आतंक हिंदुस्तान से डरेगा.
Scientists used telescopes placed around the world to capture radio waves at the center of the M87 galaxy. Then they combined 2 years of data to make this, the first ever image of a black hole. Sure, it might not look like much, but then it's a cosmic abyss that's 55 million light years away.
President Trump spent the day in Texas, talking a bit about the border crisis allegedly unfolding nearby.
Dangerous people are coming here, and the good people are dying.
But mostly, Trump was in the Lone Star State to raise money. The presidential re-election effort is now in full swing, even though all you might have seen of it is the weird videos that Trump likes to tweet. The latest one from yesterday stars Rosie O'Donnell, Bryan Cranston, Amy Schumer, and of course, Trump himself. There were even a couple of frames of video from Vice slipped into the mashup, which was all scored from the soundtrack to The Dark Knight. People thought that video was weird. Warner Brothers thought it was copyright infringement. They had the ad taken down. To the political types on Twitter, the whole thing seems slapdash, unprofessional, ill-advised. 3 adjectives that basically summed up Trump's last campaign. You know, the campaign that everyone was sure didn't have a chance in hell. The fact that Trump pulled off such a huge upset, running such an unconventional campaign, has him extremely fired up to do it again. Most presidents sort of pretend they're deciding whether to run again for a year or so before officially launching their next campaign. Trump started running for a second term hours into his first term. Since then, his campaign's been running hard, raising money at high-dollar fundraising events at places like the Trump Hotel near the White House and down at Mar-a-Lago, raising even more money through PACs. And those PACs have been pumping out a steady stream of those Facebook ads that were the hallmark of Trump's last run. Doesn't mean there aren't big differences between Trump 2016 and Trump 2020, though. The first is that he's, president. It might seem flip, but it's actually a huge deal. Trump gets all the trappings that incumbent presidents get. You get to write executive orders that fulfill campaign promises. You get to show up to events on Air Force One. And even more important, the former Republican Party pariah is now the party's official standard bearer. Marc is one of the top advisors to the president's 2020 campaign. He's helping Trump cash in on all that cred.
We can see that the president is bringing new people into the fold. And I think as we get closer to 2020, when it does become that choice, you're going to see more and more people who are saying, well, I may not always love how everything is said or how everything's, but it's really hard to argue with the results, and I want to keep that going.
A lot of that staff and infrastructure is going to come from a party apparatus that's now solidly behind the president. The campaign's goal is to raise $1 billion on its own. The Republican Party and its associated PACs will spend a boatload more. Meanwhile, a massive and still growing Democratic field is going to spend the entire next year tearing each other to shreds. That gives Trump lots of time and space to build up his momentum. Polls show that a lot of Americans feel pretty good about the economy. They may not feel as good about the leftward drift happening on the Democratic Party side. And that's where the Trump campaign sees a new opportunity.
The president's not one to just play it safe in terms of what he's already done, as we've even seen recently in his outreach talking about Jewish Americans. And so I think the president's going to continue to have a conversation with folks that, even though you may generally historically have voted one way, it's time for you to take a look at that and maybe consider looking at it in a different direction, much like he did with blue-collar workers in the blue wall states. He's not gonna shy away from a fight.
Until last year, Coral Nichols had never been to Tallahassee. Now, almost every week, she joins a group of advocates and former felons in the state capitol.
This is about the long term. This is about us building strength in our communities, building up leaders in our communities so that we can actually make change in Florida that impacts real people's lives.
They're training to continue the fight for something they thought they'd already settled, their right to vote.
We're here at a really momentous time for Amendment 4, and our voices matter.
Last November, Florida passed Amendment 4, a landmark ballot initiative that restored the right to vote to approximately 1.5 million felons in the state who hadn't committed crimes like murder or rape. Since March, some Republican lawmakers have worked to clarify Amendment 4's implementation. The most controversial proposal, requiring former felons to pay off all the restitution, court fines, and fees associated with their sentence before they can register to vote.
There's currently 2 bills. The bill in the House right now is worse than the bill in the Senate. We're opposed to both of them.
Many felons struggle to find basic employment, never mind pay off thousands in fines that can rack up quickly and accrue interest. Between 2013 and 2018 alone, the state issued $1 billion in fines and fees for felonies.
I strive to be a returning citizen, but in a current state of mind, to so many people, I'm still an inmate.
In 2005, Coral got caught embezzling money from her employer. She pled guilty to grand theft and wrongful misuse of identity and served 4 years and 7 months in prison. Now she does work helping other felons cope, develop new skills, and find housing.
What's left of your probation and restitution?
I've done 9 years and 7 months without a violation. I have a 10-year probation sentence. I'm at the very end now. But my restitution has gone from $190,000 to about $290,000.
And how does that price tag break down? Like, to the state of Florida, what do you owe them?
At the current sentence, the $190,000 in restitution that I owe at $100 a month is what I'm ordered to pay. I'll be 190 years old before that restitution is paid back.
In the eyes of former felons like Coral, lawmakers aren't trying to clarify Amendment 4. They're using a loophole to undermine it.
Sentencing someone to pay an amount of money that you know that they will never pay back in a lifetime, it's incomprehensible to me that we would set someone up in that manner.
The debate boils down to what it means to have completed all terms of your sentence. Is it when you've finished probation? Is it after you've paid some of or every last dime of court fees back to the system? Of course, the answer is political. 1.5 million potential new voters could reshape the electorate, throwing uncertainty into a state where Republicans have an edge. Representative Jamie Grant drafted the controversial bill. Coral met with him in private to plead her case and then faced him in committee.
Our only responsibility is to do exactly what was put before the voters. And so the initial bill did that. And what the initial bill did was define the terms of the sentence, and it only included the things that are read out loud by the judge in the 4 corners of the sentence.
In the past, someone could have gone to a judge, had a conversation with that judge, and had their criminal restitution transferred into a civil lien. And as soon as it
had that status, they could move forward with, say, the clemency process, and that would no longer be part of their sort of criminal sentence. This bill makes that part impossible. A civil lien doesn't help them move forward.
But to suggest that just because something's converted from criminal to civil, it's no longer part of the sentence, I think is a far leap. However, what we have said is that the Department of Corrections, under existing statutory authority, can waive the collection where somebody is indigent, right? The ability for a victim to waive restitution or for a judge to actually terminate the sentence. So rather than just saying we're going to convert it to a civil lien, the bill actually allows a judge to terminate the sentence.
What you just described means that there are a lot of different people who are going to end up having the right to make decisions around other people's right to vote.
We still have to operate inside the confines of both the separations of powers, existing state law, and existing constitutional amendments. What you're highlighting is why it is so problematic to make policy in the Constitution. What we're going to do is try and make the best sense of it with the black letter of the law.
Grant's bill in the House passed. Advocates failed to change lawmakers' minds about fees, but Grant did add an amendment that removed the expectation that they'd have to pay off interest too.
What they did is actually taking a step towards that gray area, a step outside of politics, a step outside of left and right, progressive, conservative, into the realm of making decisions on behalf of people that live in the gray. I live in the gray.
In a contest that was closer than expected for longer than expected, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was re-elected yesterday. While Netanyahu's Likud party only won 35 out of 120 seats in the Knesset, the bloc of right-wing parties that support Netanyahu took a total of 65 seats. That means he'll stay in the office he's held for a decade.
שוב נתן בי אמון בפעם החמישית ועוד אמון גדול יותר.
It also means he can now turn his attention to a slightly more pressing task, trying to stay out of jail. 6 weeks ago, Israel's Attorney General Avichai Mendelblit said that he was planning to indict Netanyahu on charges of fraud, breach of trust, and bribery in 3 criminal cases related to influence peddling. The Prime Minister has denied all 3.
אני מתכוון להמשיך לשרת אתכם ואת המדינה כראש הממשלה עוד שנים רבות. אל תאמינו לכל הספין.
So what did Netanyahu supposedly do? Case 1000 alleges that he and his wife Sarah received expensive gifts, including cigars, jewelry, and champagne, worth more than $250,000 from wealthy businessmen on whose behalf Netanyahu lobbied for political favors, including things like special tax exemptions. Case 2000 alleges that Netanyahu conspired with the owner of the Israeli daily tabloid Yediot Ahronot to guarantee more favorable coverage of his administration in exchange for Netanyahu's support of legislation aimed at hurting one of the newspaper's key rivals, Israel Hayom. Finally, the most serious case, Case 4000, has to do with Israel's biggest telecom company, Bezek. It alleges that Netanyahu killed a regulatory reform that would have opened up the internet market in Israel to real competition, which Bezek didn't want, in exchange for glowing coverage on a much-read news site called Walla, which is owned by Bezek's controlling shareholder, Shaul Elovich. That all might sound damning, particularly given that the letter Mandelblit wrote detailing the evidence was 57 pages long. But Netanyahu still has options. He can't just fire Mandelblit, since Israel's Attorney General is an independent position. But under Israel's system, he does have the right to present exculpatory evidence at a hearing, which is scheduled for July. And even if he is indicted, there's no law that says he has to leave office. Other Israeli prime ministers who got in legal trouble, Yitzhak Rabin and Ehud Olmert, stepped down before any charges were filed. But this is Bibi we're talking about. Surviving political scandals is what he does. In 1997, Israeli police recommended that he be prosecuted for appointing an attorney general specifically to protect one of his political allies. And 2 years later, he was accused of accepting $100,000 in bribes. But ultimately, no charges were filed in either case, and despite calls for his resignation, Netanyahu refused to step down. The same is likely to be true this time around. Rather than quit, Netanyahu will try to drag the legal process out for as long as possible.
כפי שכולם רואים גם את האמת על התקשורת המגויסת, את חוסר ההגינות של תעשיית הדכדוך, את הפייק ניוז.
If he is indicted, Netanyahu could be voted out of office by a simple majority in the Knesset. But legislators might well be reluctant to do that, given that voters apparently didn't care much about the accusations against him to begin with. Which means Netanyahu may soon pull off a rare feat, being at the same time a country's most powerful politician and its most high-profile criminal defendant.
Location we're going to
Yes.
is sort of private and clandestine
Yes.
for me to get to without people knowing.
Okay.
So initially on the majority of the journey, I'd like to blindfold you.
So that no one can hold me hostage and make me tell them.
Exactly.
Okay, let's do it.
Peter, who's asked us to withhold his last name, is not a serial killer. He's a yoga instructor, life coach, and a prepper, bracing for a no-deal Brexit. We're on our way to one of his secret spots where he plans to ride out the post-Brexit apocalypse. He wouldn't have been so afraid if Parliament hadn't been so indecisive. Today, the EU voted to delay Brexit again, moving the deadline for departure from this Friday to October 31st.
You know, regarding Brexit, you know, if the whole system failed and you just had to get away for whatever reason, then this would be an example of where I'd come. But
Oh, lovely. But ordinarily you'd be doing this on your own.
Yeah.
Look at that! A pop-up tent.
Yeah.
Did you vote to leave the EU?
Yes. I believe in individual countries' cultures. I love Europe. Europe's fantastic. But maybe not it being run under one totalitarian type of government, if you want to call it that.
Regret it?
Talking to you now in this weather, maybe.
But weather is the least of Peter's worries. He's packed supplies to survive a full-scale descent into chaos in his suburban home.
So this is your garage, but instead of a car, we have got some kit.
I've got a mode of transport, 2 canoes, inflatable canoes.
What?
I've got these specifically made to my design and specifications, and there are only 2 of them of their kind. I've got a 2-burner stove there in the green container. I've got fuel backup. I've got large cooking pots if I had to do groups of people for cooking. Then tarps, different tents.
Can you describe what you think is going to happen?
Can I
He's
just...
putting the glasses on.
Yeah, this is going to be really
Serious.
important stuff now. If I can just read you
Okay.
the contingency, this is from the government. This is what the most extreme situation of Brexit, okay, is transport systems they're concerned about, people crossing borders, UK food and water supplies. Water supplies, why is that? So it's interesting to look into why they're concerned about water supplies being affected. It doesn't really make sense, but there's got to be a reason for them to actually anticipate that. Law enforcement implications. What does that mean? Now, using my imagination, you're opening the doors to then go, there's all these things that we just would have thought, oh, it's just crossing borders and whether it will affect, you know, getting medication from Europe into this country. There are other things which are actually the mainstay and fundamental foundation of just society ticking over in general. Then people that weren't into prepping are taking that sort of mindset and attitude because of Brexit. And that's what I think stimulated it for a lot of people.
Peter isn't an outlier. So many people are freaking out about Brexit that helping them prep is now a cottage industry.
We're driving through the north of England to visit a man who's selling something called a Brexit box. Brexit boxes contain enough freeze-dried food to feed one person for 30 days. This may sound like some kind of a joke, but while the government's telling everyone to keep calm and carry on, at the same time, They've also employed somebody called a food supplies minister, which we haven't seen the likes of since wartime.
James Blake founded emergencyfoodstorage.co.uk a decade ago, before Brexit was even a twinkle in David Cameron's eye. And although we were allowed to use our subject's full name this time, we weren't allowed to give his location and had to shoot in a showroom he set up especially for media.
So here it is, the infamous Brexit box.
That's right. So this has 60 main meals, plus an additional 48 meat products, so things like ground beef, diced chicken, so you can create your own food. So if you add both those together, you've got over 100 meals in the box. The food is freeze-dried, so they last for 25 years, so it's absolutely ideal for emergencies.
How much does a Brexit box cost?
Nearly £300, or I don't know, what's that would be, $400 roughly, I guess.
The price is steep, but that's not why his overall business is slow. The very threat of Brexit is hurting Blake's chances to sell to paranoiacs all over Europe's single market.
Brexit is a terrible idea for our business because we operate within the UK and Europe. You know, we sell our products all over Europe. That being said, I did vote for Brexit, and I would do it again. Long term, it's a good idea, but we're going to suffer short term for that.